Have you ever had a night you thought would be magical, only for it to turn into the most humiliating evening of your life? That's exactly what happened to Lena Hart. Lena was not the type of woman who asked for much. She was quiet, hard-working, and carried her struggles alone. Every day, she ironed clothes, scrubbed floors, and worked extra hours as a maid in the Grand Cole estate, a house so large it could swallow her tiny apartment whole. But behind her calm smile, Lena carried heavy burdens. She was the one keeping her sick mother's medicine cabinet stocked. She was the one paying her younger brother's school fees. Every coin she earned was stretched to the breaking point. And still, she stayed honest. Earlier that very afternoon, something happened that revealed who Lena truly was. While ironing a crisp navy jacket in her employer's study, she felt a bulge in the pocket. When she reached in, she pulled out a thick envelope. Inside it was a stack of bills, $3,000 in cash. No one was around. There were no cameras, no witnesses, just her and the envelope. For a brief second, the weight of her family's struggles pressed down on her. That money could have fixed so many of her problems. But Lena didn't hesitate. She smoothed the envelope and quietly laid it on Adrian Cole's polished desk, as if it had never been in her hands. That evening, her overtime hours were cut without explanation. After wiring money to her mother and covering her brother's tuition, Lena had just one crumpled $5 bill left. She slipped it into her small purse, meant only as bus fare, and tried not to think about it. Tonight, she told herself, wasn't about her struggles. Tonight was supposed to be special. She had been set up on a blind date by a friend, and for the first time in months, Lena allowed herself to feel a spark of hope. She pulled on her best dress, a royal blue piece she'd saved for years. She brushed her hair into soft waves, looked into the mirror, and whispered to her reflection, "You deserve a nice night. Just one night." The restaurant she walked into was like something out of a dream. Warm candlelight glowed against the walls. The smell of rosemary and butter floated from the kitchen. Couples laughed over glasses of wine, dressed in silk and suits. Lena was shown to a small table tucked near the window. 2 empty wine glasses gleamed before her, one for her, one for the man she was waiting for. She smoothed the creases of her dress nervously, her back straight, her knees pressed together, trying her best to look as if she belonged. Minutes passed. She checked her phone, no message, no call. Her fingers fidgeted with the stem of her glass as the knot in her stomach tightened. A polite young waiter approached with a practiced smile. "Miss, may I hold a card for the table?" "It's just restaurant policy." Lena froze. Her heart thudded painfully against her ribs. "My guest will be here soon," she said softly. He promised he'd take care of it." The waiter hesitated but nodded. "Of course. I'll check back shortly." Lena exhaled shakily. She could feel her cheeks growing warm. The truth was she had no credit card to offer, no savings to back her up. Only the wrinkled $5 bill hidden in her purse. Across the room, at a quiet corner table, a man in a sharp royal blue suit glanced up from his menu. His name was Adrian Cole, the billionaire owner of the very company Lena worked for. He was there for a client dinner but paused when he saw her. His maid, sitting alone in a dress the same shade as his suit. Her posture seemed to shrink a little more with every minute that passed. Adrian watched silently, sensing something was wrong. Then, the heavy wooden doors of the restaurant swung open. A tall man in a gray jacket strolled in as if the world belonged to him. Trevor Blake, Lena's blind date. He didn't apologize for being late. He didn't even look at her properly. He simply slid into the chair across from her, smirking. "Hope you weren't waiting long," he said casually. Lena forced a small smile. "Just a few minutes." Trevor grabbed the menu and chuckled. "Wow, the prices here are wild. Did you pick this place?" Lena's brows furrowed in confusion. "You suggested it." Right, he said dismissively, waving at the waiter. "Sparkling water for me." When the waiter returned, he asked for a card again. Trevor leaned back in his chair, a sly grin on his face. Ladies first. For a moment time seemed to stop. Lena's stomach dropped. Her palms went clammy. Slowly, she reached into her purse and pulled out the crumpled $5 bill. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. This is all I have." Trevor's laughter rang out too loudly, drawing glances from nearby tables. $5. That's what you brought to a place like this? Unbelievable. Lena's face flushed crimson. Her eyes burned as she lowered her gaze to the table. Trevor leaned forward, his voice growing crueler. "You really should have warned me. Dragging me to a place like this on a maid's salary. What were you thinking?" A hush fell over the table next to them. A couple turned their faces away, pretending not to listen. Lena's lips trembled. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Sorry?" Trevor mocked. "You can't even cover bread. Don't tell me you scrub floors or something." Her fingers clenched around her purse strap as she searched for words. So you are a maid," Trevor cut her off with a smirk. "Figures." The word landed like a slap. Lena felt the sting in her chest. Just then, the floor manager approached with a stiff tone. "Ma'am, without a valid card, we'll have to release the table." The humiliation was too much to bear. Lena pushed her chair back, her voice breaking. "I'll leave. I don't want to cause trouble." She rose to her feet, clutching her purse tightly, feeling as if the walls of the restaurant were closing in on her. And that's when it happened. A chair scraped across the polished floor from the corner of the room. Every head turned toward the sound. Adrian Cole, the man in the royal blue suit, had stood up. His presence commanded silence. His eyes locked on Lena as he stepped forward. "That won't be necessary," he said, his calm voice cutting through the tension like a warm blade. Lena froze. Her heart pounded as she recognized her employer, the last person on earth she wanted to witness her humiliation. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The restaurant was wrapped in a heavy hush. Only the soft clinking of glasses from the bar broke the silence. Lena stood frozen, her fingers gripping the strap of her small purse, her eyes wide with disbelief. Of all the people to witness her humiliation, why did it have to be Adrian Cole? Trevor leaned back in his chair, the corner of his mouth curling into a smug grin. "So you know her," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Figures she works for you. You're really going to save your maid in front of everyone." The word maid echoed in Lena's ears like a cruel reminder of her place. She wanted to disappear, to sink into the floor. Adrian's calm gaze didn't waver. He stepped closer to their table, his green suit catching the warm light of the chandelier. His voice was even, but there was steel in it. "She's not just a maid. She's Lena Hart. And tonight she is my guest." The floor manager, who had been standing stiffly by the table, cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, our policy requires." Adrian reached into his wallet, pulled out a sleek black card, and placed it in the manager's hand without breaking eye contact with Lena. "Run whatever hold you need. Then apologize to her. She's the one who deserves it." The manager's face turned pale. He shifted his gaze to Lena and lowered his voice. "Miss, sorry. I spoke out of turn." Lena's eyes fell to the ground, her voice shaking. "It's fine." Adrian's sharp reply cut through her words. "No, it's not fine. You don't apologize for being humiliated. They apologize for humiliating you." Murmurs rippled quietly among the diners. A few nodded in agreement. Others simply watched in silence, their forks paused in mid-air. Trevor chuckled under his breath, trying to brush it all off. "Wow. She came here with $5, and you're pretending she belongs in a place like this? She's just a maid." Adrian's jaw tightened as he turned his head toward Trevor. "You want to talk about money?" His voice was low but carried through the room. "Let's talk about integrity. This afternoon she found $3,000 in my jacket. No record. No witnesses. She could have pocketed it, and no one would have known. Do you know what she did?" The room grew still. Trevor's smirk faltered as Adrian continued. She put it back on my desk without a word. That's who she is. That's worth more than every cheap insult you've thrown tonight. Lena's lips trembled as tears gathered in her eyes. She lifted a hand to cover her mouth, her shoulders shaking. Adrian's gaze softened when he saw her tears, but his voice stayed firm as he looked back at Trevor. You tried to reduce her to $5. But she's worth more than anything you could ever afford to mock. A ripple of whispers spread across the restaurant, this time not with judgment, but with something closer to admiration. Then Adrian noticed the faint red glow on Trevor's phone resting on the table. It was recording. His eyes narrowed. Delete the video, he said evenly. Trevor shifted uncomfortably, trying to laugh it off. Relax. It's just a joke. Adrian didn't budge. His voice sharpened. Delete it. Now. The restaurant's security staff appeared, arms crossed as they stood just behind Trevor. Under their watchful eyes, Trevor cursed under his breath, fumbled with the phone, and tapped at the screen until the red light disappeared. He shoved the phone into his jacket pocket and pushed back his chair so hard it screeched across the floor. Enjoy your charity project, he spat bitterly, his face flushed. She's all yours. He stormed out, the heavy door swinging shut behind him. A long breath seemed to pass through the restaurant, the kind of breath people don't realize they've been holding until the tension finally lifts. Adrian turned to Lena, his voice now gentler, carrying no hint of the steel he'd shown moments ago. Sit down, he said softly. Lena hesitated, her voice almost a whisper. Everyone's staring. Adrian's expression softened even more, and he nodded reassuringly. Let them. They're not staring at shame anymore. They're staring at respect. Something in his tone broke through her embarrassment. Slowly, almost shyly, she lowered herself back into the chair. The waiter, looking both nervous and relieved, approached with his notepad in hand. Shall I take your order, sir? Adrian didn't even glance at the menu. Bring her something simple. Not for show. Something she'll actually enjoy. A few minutes later, a warm plate of roast chicken and vegetables was placed in front of Lena. The aroma made her stomach tighten. She hadn't realized how hungry she was. Her fingers curled around the fork, but her voice was quiet. You didn't have to do this, she said. Adrian leaned forward slightly, meeting her gaze. Yes, I did. You gave me honesty when no one was watching. Tonight, I gave you dignity when everyone was. Lena's eyes blurred with tears again, but this time she smiled through them, a small, grateful smile that made her look lighter somehow. For the rest of the evening, the restaurant felt different. The diners returned to their meals, and the soft hum of conversation filled the air again. But there was a subtle shift, the kind that happens when people witness something rare. Kindness and courage standing up to cruelty. And in the soft glow of the candlelight, Lena Hart took her first bite of warm food that tasted a little bit like hope. The drive back to the coal estate was quiet. Outside, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold against the night, but Lena barely noticed. She sat in the passenger seat of Adrian's sleek black car, her hands folded neatly in her lap, still replaying everything that had happened at the restaurant. Adrian glanced at her now and then, as if wanting to say something but choosing silence instead. At last, when they turned onto the long driveway lined with lantern-lit oaks, Lena broke the silence. I don't know how to thank you for what you did tonight. Adrian's eyes stayed on the road, but his voice was calm and low. You don't have to thank me. You deserved better than what they gave you. She hesitated, then added softly. Most people wouldn't have stepped in. Not for someone like me. For a moment, Adrian didn't reply. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. I know what it feels like to be treated as if you're invisible. When I was younger, I wasn't the man you see now. I learned the hard way how much dignity matters. Something about his words settled deep in Lena's heart. When they arrived at the estate, Adrian parked the car and stepped out, then opened the door for her. A small gesture, but one that made her cheeks warm. The grand foyer was quiet. The rest of the staff had gone to their quarters for the night. Only the faint ticking of the antique clock filled the air. Adrian walked toward his study but paused at the foot of the stairs. "Lena," he called gently. She turned back to face him. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a slim, leather envelope. He held it out to her. "Take this." Confused, she stepped closer and accepted it with hesitant fingers. Inside was a crisp white sheet, a scholarship application bearing the Cole Foundation's emblem at the top. Her eyes widened as she read the heading aloud in disbelief. Nursing Program Scholarship. Full tuition? Adrian's expression softened with a faint smile. "You once told me you wanted to finish school but couldn't afford it. I've seen how hard you work, how you care for everyone around you. You deserve this chance." Lena's hands trembled as she held the paper. Tears threatened to spill again. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll apply," Adrian replied simply. For the first time that evening, Lena laughed, a small, shaky laugh that carried a spark of relief. "I will. I promise I will." She clutched the envelope to her chest as though it were something fragile and precious. That night, long after Adrian had gone upstairs and the house had gone still, Lena sat at the small desk in her modest quarters. She spread the scholarship form in front of her, staring at it under the soft yellow glow of the lamp. Her thoughts drifted back to her late mother's voice, a memory from when she was a little girl. "Kindness can open doors that pride will never find." She wiped her tears, picked up the pen, and began to fill out the application carefully, as if each letter carried the weight of all her hopes. A week later, Lena received her acceptance letter. When she read it aloud in the kitchen, the other staff members cheered and hugged her. For the first time in years, Lena felt as though her life was finally shifting toward the light. On the day she left to begin her classes, Adrian was at the front door waiting. He handed her a neatly packed satchel. Inside was a set of nursing textbooks, a new pair of shoes, and a handwritten note that said, "The world needs more hearts like yours." "I see." Lena pressed the note to her heart and smiled through her tears. "Thank you for believing in me," she whispered. Years later, Lena stood in the same grand foyer, no longer in a maid's uniform but in a crisp white nurse's coat. She had returned to thank the man who had once stood up for her when the world tried to push her down. Adrian, older now but still carrying that same steady presence, greeted her with a warm smile. "I told you that you deserved better," he said quietly. Lena's eyes shone as she replied, "You were right. Sometimes all a person needs is someone to believe in them. Just once." That night at the restaurant had changed more than just her evening. It had changed the entire course of her life. In the end, the world didn't remember Trevor's cruel words or the whispers of that crowd. What they remembered, what Lena carried in her heart forever, was a simple truth. A moment of kindness can be worth more than gold. If this story touched your heart, remember, dignity is worth more than gold. What would you have done if you saw Lena being humiliated that night? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that prove kindness can change lives.